Again, a very happy Diwali to you. You will hear some crackers perhaps during the broadcast on our side, but of course in Chennai the major celebration was yesterday for Deepavali, and in fact I wonder if you can even hear me where you are. Probably there are a lot of crackers there, at least if you're in India. In fact, once Nayaswami Devi was giving a broadcast from Pune and on Diwali Day, and she said, for those of you tuning in from America, we are not under attack. It is actually Diwali celebrations going on. So you can think of perhaps the light of the crackers as the light of God trying to pierce through the darkness of Maya. I know I am reaching here, but we have to try to find some reaction to the crackers that is positive. And perhaps the noise of the crackers is either the sound of the vrittis in the spine popping as we do meditation and Kriya, or perhaps it is God knocking at the door saying, wake up from this dream. And we have to, again, try to put a positive spin on something that otherwise, well, anyway, better to accept what is. So this is not only, of course, a celebration of Diwali tonight for this broadcast, but also a reading from Living Wisely, Living Well. And today's subject, or today's reading for today, the 7th of November. Swami Kriyananda writes, "Dress not for admiration, but rather to give others pleasure. Often I have gone out of my way to thank a perfect stranger, male or female, for wearing something colorful and pleasing to the eye. Color especially, if it is well chosen, can make everyone's day a little brighter. When thanking people, however, try never to give the impression that you may have some ulterior motive for doing so." And this is true. We would see Swamiji when he would go up to someone, a perfect stranger who was dressed particularly nicely, and say, "Thank you for wearing that. I appreciate that." And it was a beautiful, though perhaps not first instinctive behavior to see. In other words, many of us would not necessarily have had the courage to go up to someone and saying, "Thank you for wearing that." He did say at one time, "I'm 80 years old, so I can sort of get away with it." But still, the thing is that what Swamiji didn't mention is that he himself would also dress beautifully, whether he was in his monastic robes, which of course were a beautiful color and just beautiful generally, but whether orange or blue over the years, but also he would generally wear a suit jacket or a tie or a shirt of a very vivid, beautiful color, jewel tones they're called, which are pure, bright colors, the colors of the rainbow, or the colors of pure jewels. And so I learned when coming to Ananda that there was quite a benefit to wearing these bright colors. And in fact, when I met someone, actually a friend who was an astrologer, he said that when people dress sort of unconsciously, you can almost predict the colors that they will wear according to what is going on in their chart. Or in this case, he was specifically pointing out to their Mahadasha. The one is related to different planets. And I said, well, that's ridiculous. I choose to wear colors that I choose. I'm not just doing something subject to some planet. And he said, well, you're in the Saturn Mahadasha, and the color of Saturn is sort of a dark blue, a heavier, muddier blue, not this kind of a sky blue. And I said, well, pfft. And then I went home and looked in my closet, and guess what? All blue, if not blue, gray. It was all just dark and heavy. And he said, when you dress in those colors, it is out of a wish to remain hidden. And I thought, in fact, it's true. There was a part of me that was holding back, that was trying to be hidden, staying out of the way at that time in my life. So I started buying clothes of different colors. And when I bought, for example, a bright, cheery red color or a a nice vivid green or a bright blue, I did feel that it took a little bit of courage, actually, that, gosh, do I really want to be seen in this way? But I started thinking of it as Swamiji said, let me attune myself to this bright color. Let me try to feel energized by this color. I even started changing the colors according to the planetary color for that day of the week, which sometimes people have talked about. I don't know if it was a spiritual practice or if it had any benefit, but if nothing else, it gave me an excuse to do something different each day and to try to stay awake. Even Monday, of course, is the moon, a moon day, and so I would wear white, the moon's color. Tuesday is Mars, red, Wednesday, green, and so on. I'm sure you know the planets and colors, and if not, well, you can always ask, and we're happy to finish the list. But this practice of wearing a brighter color is not something I was personally thinking of as giving pleasure to others, but it certainly gave me more energy. And it also, as I said, helped me to be more conscious about what I was wearing instead of just the gray uniform that I had been wearing before. And it's interesting because when people do dress beautifully, I think the first or default thought is to attract attention, to receive energy from others, to be noticed. And of course it's not bad if you're going to dress nicer than you would, even for a lesser pure motive, because still at least you're dressing nicely. But again, as I said, Swamiji said, dress to give pleasure to others. And it's a very sweet thought, because even in the way we appear, we can think of that as a service. Whereas it might be something that we wouldn't think of. How can I give through the clothing that I wear? And so the importance of having beauty around you is very, it's actually a spiritual quality. Yoganandaji had beautiful temples, beautiful places. And he said if hotels, luxury hotels, can have beautiful carpets, why cannot a temple of God also have a beautiful carpet or a beautiful rug? He had a deep blue rug in his temples, and we've continued that tradition on at Ananda. Swamiji, too, was attracted to beauty. He said it reminded him of the astral world. And he said, in fact, the astral world is more familiar to me than this world, where the colors are bright and beautiful. Master said, I spend much of my time in the astral world. And so we have come from the astral world and we are heading back there. Hopefully not tonight, stay away from the crackers. But the idea is, again, to tune into these pure color tones. And if you don't understand or believe anything I'm saying, it's fine, try it. Just try it out. Try wearing a color you might never wear. You might want to look in the mirror, because it's true, some of us can't quite wear every color there is. Some of us who have, as it's called, yellow undertones in our skin can't wear yellow itself. It kind of makes us look somewhat ill. And for others, it's other colors. If they have a different kind of complexion, sometimes a very bright color is too glaring compared to their own coloring. But this is perhaps getting deeper into fashion sense than you might perhaps want to go. But the point is to dress consciously. Even if you wear the same thing every day, try to put some consciousness in it and think of it too as, how can I give to others? How can I, if not through my clothing, how can I create a beautiful environment to help others? I didn't have any interest in beauty when I was growing up, and especially in one subject in particular, computers. I mean, who's ever heard of a beautiful computer? You might know now if you've seen the Apple computers or other computers that try to be stylish, and of course our phones also are now trying to be beautiful as well as functional. But years ago, when Apple came out with a new line of computers that were called iMacs, I won't go into the details of what they were, but a friend of mine had received some money and she wanted to buy a computer with it. And she picked out a high-end computer because it looked beautiful. It had a nice sleek frame and a curvy this and that and a screen that moved this way and all these things. And I said to her, but Barbara, for much less money, you can get this computer, which actually is still an Apple computer and still will run all the same software, but isn't as powerful, but you don't need that greater power. And she said, Dharmaraj, that computer is ugly. And I said, well, I mean, it may be not as pretty as this other one, but it's almost half the price. And, you know, after a few months, I mean, you won't even notice. It'll just be the computer you have. She said, if it's ugly, I won't use it. I thought, wow, especially for me, computers, something so prosaic. I mean, it was kind of like, I need a beautiful red hammer, otherwise I won't use it. And who cares if it gets the job done? But I learned something, because she wanted an uplifted environment. She wanted to have beauty. And if something was more beautiful, why not go for that? She could have argued back, though she didn't at the time, that if it is beautiful and I enjoy it, after a month or two, I won't remember the money I saved in getting or the money I could have saved if I had gotten the uglier one. I will just know that I have the beautiful one. Nayaswami Jaya has pointed the same thing out. He said, if choosing between two tools, I have learned that I'd prefer to get the more expensive one, because in a month or two I won't care about whatever money I saved, but I will be glad that I have a good tool. And so again, it's something to think about, choosing not the more expensive, more luxurious, more sort of ostentatious option, but choosing the option that has higher energy. That's the real thing to tune into. If something is overpriced, that's no good. And if it's just to show to others, that's no good. But if it really represents better quality, higher energy, well, that is perhaps something worth investing in, rather than just choosing to save every single penny that way, but then have something that's a little funky, a little clunky, and so on. So, beauty in our environment is very important, because why? It uplifts the mind. And so even in choosing the colors of the Nayaswami order, the monastic order, Swami Kriyananda chose bright tones, a bright yellow, a bright blue for the Nayaswami color, yellow for brahmacharis, and white for tyagis. Again, a bright pure color that is a giving energy, first to the person, but also to others. Why be ugly in our appearance? Swamiji said he was at first inclined in this direction, that he gave no thought what he wore. And he said, I had a t-shirt that was very holy, but not in the sense of being sacred. And when Rajarshi was coming, Master's foremost disciple, Master had all the monks line up, and Swamiji was in one of his holy t-shirts. And Master said, don't dress like that. He said, go put on a new shirt. He was wanting the monks to make a good impression, the newer monks to make a good impression on Rajarshi when he came. And so Swamiji took that to heart, that maybe it does matter how we appear. He often pointed out how Anandamoyi Ma, though her disciples had very little money, she always encouraged them to wear clean and brightly colored clothing. She said to them, you aren't in poverty. You can dress more nicely than this. And so there can seem to be a spiritual principle in just, who cares what covers this body and so on. But again, you have to look at, what is its actual effect? Is it working? Is it actually that you give no thought to what you're wearing, or is it actually an excuse to just be lazy, to be unconscious? Is it energizing to the mind? Is it uplifting or not to your own mind? And so if you experiment like this, it would be interesting to observe the results. So again, we can say whatever spiritual theory we want, but we have to say, does it work? Is it actually working, and is it working for me? Perhaps someone else just revels in their sackcloth. But I think if you tried it, first thing, you'd find it rather itchy, rather hot or cold, depending on the place you're in. And you may spend more time dealing with the results of the sackcloth than thinking about God. And so again, experiment and be practical. This is the way of the yogi. Since we were talking about colors, I thought it might be nice to read a little bit about what Swamiji has said about the colors, the different spiritual qualities of different colors. And this may be a guide to you in what colors you choose. Again, first of all, if you're interested in going in this line, let them be bright, pure tones. In other words, not mixed colors or sort of muddier hues. But again, the bright colors of the rainbow. That's a good guideline. Swamiji says the color, the color orange is traditionally worn by Swamis in India. This is from a renunciate order for the New Age. Actually, and more correctly, the color is Geru, which comes from the earth, and is that color which is an admixture of iron, which produces a sort of reddish brown. Orange belongs to a part of the spectrum that denotes specifically an outwardly directed energy. Red we think of as suggesting in its baser associations the emotions of lust or anger. In its higher associations, cherry red, for example, it suggests cheerfulness. In both cases, one thinks of the color red as signifying an outwardly directed energy. Orange, which lies between red and yellow in the spectrum, is associated with the color of fire. Orange is appropriate for the fiery willpower one needs, who wants sternly to reject temptation in all its forms. He mentions at other times, one of the challenges of orange is that it attracts attention to itself. He said, notice how construction workers on the roadways wear orange to be seen so that they won't be hit by the cars zooming past them. And so orange, when it is used in that way to draw attention to itself, can be a challenge, actually, especially for a renunciate who's trying to overcome ego, not emphasize the ego by saying, look at me, I'm wearing orange, and you know what that means. Yellow, the color worn by Buddhist monks in Thailand, suggests the sunlight of wisdom, insight, creativity, and impartial acceptance of things as they are. This, too, is an excellent color for monks. Again, however, what yellow lacks is inwardness. As the sun's rays shine outwardly upon the earth, so yellow suggests wisdom applied outwardly. It lacks as well the softening touch of devotional love. You see how much there is to color, something that we can just think has no particular meaning at all or is arbitrary. What is your favorite color? People might ask, as we were growing up. And it might just seem any color you pick is fine. Now, of course, on one level that may be true, but we may not know why we have chosen a particular color, and if our choice was a wise one. Are we choosing a color that is taking us in a direction that we're already balanced or unbalanced in, going too much in this direction? We are outwardly directed and we wear outwardly directed colors. Or are we choosing a color that also represents a need that we have? Of course, again, you can choose different colors according to, I was saying rotate according to different days or rotating your closet, because you may want to draw different qualities on different days. Green suggests health and happiness, though it can also indicate disturbed emotions. Think of its frequent association with envy and jealousy. So again, a pure bright green, like sort of fresh, healthy plants, not sort of a muddy or sickly green. Blue suggests calmness, kindness, and an expansive consciousness. Blue should, however, convey warm feelings and not be, for example, a steely blue. Steely blue, of course, is a bit cold and insensitive. A bright, not dark, royal blue seems to me the perfect color shade for expressing the renunciate attitude I have in mind. I show this color on the cover of this book. He mentions at other times also blue is the color of the sky, and that's another reason for it suggesting expansion. Indigo and violet, sort of a darker blue and a lighter purple. To complete the spectrum, which we might recall to memory by the acronym Roy G. Biv. Some people prefer its opposite, Vibgyor. indigo and violet are actually the most spiritual colors when thought of as light. He says, however, indigo and violet, moreover, when seen in dim light, appear almost black. And so, in a way, they are the highest colored, highest vibrational colors, having the highest rate of vibration in the visible spectrum, and in that way could imply the highest energy. And as he said, in fact, they are the most spiritual colors, but as he wrote at another time, perhaps we're not yet ready for those colors. I know there was a time at Ananda where he was suggesting that those people giving the services, the acharyas, wear a bright purple robe. And I think, again, not everyone was ready for that at the time that it came. Some people were quite all for it. Let's definitely wear purple. We have an association of purple also with, royalty and priests and so on. And so there is that challenge that it has associated with it. I think in time, perhaps, maybe the renunciate color for Treta Yuga will be purple. In fact, this is part of what... as I'm mentioning the yugas, it could be that orange was needed to be the renunciate color in Kali Yuga, representing again that fire, that single-mindedness. But there is a time for all things, and it may be that that association that color needed to be changed in this time because the attitudes get too overbalanced in one direction and then need to be corrected by being brought in another direction. This is, after all, why the masters come. The last thing I wanted to mention about colors, and you see how I very sort of sneakily got away from fashion sense, of which I have very little, into talking at least about color, which is a little more expansive and a little more deeper, and something I can speak on with a little more authority than on clothes. And because another association with the colors and how they relate to each other is not just the visible spectrum or the colors of the rainbow, and of course, as Swamiji gave their spiritual qualities, but also the colors of the chakras. And I wanted to share something from the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. Swamiji writes about the chakras. Yogis who follow the upward course in life raise the fiery energy in the spine and awaken in passing the chakras in the spine. I can't help but mention, because so many people come to us for chakra awakening and ask us, what can we do for chakra awakening? We say, look, Kriya Yoga is the final awakening. The chakras are just, awakening the energy here through Kriya Yoga or another meditation practice is the final awakening. Why just awaken the chakras? They are doors through which you are meant to pass, not to just hang out in the doorway of. You forgive me, I have a little bit of a something in my attitude I'm sure I have to correct, but it makes me smile when Swamiji says, the rising energy awakens in passing the chakras in the spine. The greater the upward flow of energy, the greater the light at the point between the eyebrows. Indeed, the clear vision of that light reveals a differently colored light in each chakra, which is seen in the spiritual eye. And here are the colors as he's given, as given. Yellow for the Muladhara, not red. So if you're thinking, yes, of course it's red, the color he gives is yellow, which I'll explain, and this is the reason why I chose to read this. White for the Swadhisthana, red for the Manipura, blue for the Anahata, smoke-colored with little specks of light for the Vishuddha. And so again, first chakra, yellow, second chakra, white, third chakra, red, fourth chakra, blue, and then fifth chakra is smoke-colored with little specks of light. And in the spiritual eye, as has already been described, a ring of gold surrounding a field of deep blue-violet, with a silvery five-pointed star at the center. Swamiji continues, if you're scratching your head saying, these aren't the colors I heard of. It is tempting to compare the colors of these 6 chakras along with the 7th in the so-called crown chakra at the top of the head with the colors of the rainbow. The rainbow is certainly comparable with the 7 chakras, especially with their gradual change in hue from materialistic red to spiritual violet, as we had already discussed. And he gives the colors of the rainbow, which we have already talked about. This comparison must be written off, however, as more poetical than literal. The colors stated above by Paramhansa Yogananda are the actual chakra colors seen in the spiritual eye. How do we know those are the colors? Well, because Yogananda ji saw them and told us. And so it's interesting, too, how the masters come and correct misunderstandings that creep in over time. We talked about this just we had a Sunday satsang here in Chennai where the reading for the week talked about the Lord's Prayer, which Jesus gives. And he says in the prayer, as it says in the Bible, lead us, you're praying to God, lead us not into temptation. And of course, if you think about it thoughtlessly, we can just, well, I don't know if you can think anything thoughtlessly, but if you ponder it thoughtlessly, you could say, lead us into temptation. Fine. I mean, lead us not into temptation. Sure. Why? Well, because that's what it says. But if we put any thought into it, why would we ask God, our Divine Mother, our Heavenly Father, lead us not into temptation, lead us not into trouble? Why would Divine Mother, why would your mother purposely lead you into trouble? As I joked on Sunday, the mother is always worried about the child getting into trouble and says, please, when you reach your destination, give me a missed call so I know that your heart is still beating, because otherwise she will wonder whether it is or not. You see, very often parents will worry for the children. And so how is that in any way, does it make any sense that God, the true parent, would be leading us into trouble? Master said yes, in the sense that God allows Satan, allows Maya to put us through tests. In that way, he allows us to go through temptation. In fact, he talked about how, well, the story is too long, but he talked about how Jesus or God tempted Saint Teresa of Avila, but then saved her. He said it's Divine Mother who exposes us to temptation, but it's also Divine Mother who rescues us if we pass the test. So yes, in that sense of being tested, of not fighting our battles for us, sure, okay. But he said that's not what Jesus meant. How do we know? Well, Yogananda ji said it. Otherwise, we would have no way of knowing. He said Jesus meant, or even said, leave us not in temptation. Which, if you think, makes a lot more sense. He said, God never, like a naughty schoolboy, would lead someone purposely into a trap. He said Jesus' prayer, which we should address to God, is leave us not in temptation. We know we're in temptation. That's obvious. We know we're in trouble. Get us out of this pit is the prayer. Only you can help us. It's really beautiful when you realize the true meaning. And so, as I said, just as the Master corrected that mistake that had crept into religion, just as Sri Yukteswar corrected the calculation of the yugas to even get that straight, because we're not still in Kali Yuga, so Master corrected these colors of the chakras. So as you can see, I started with dress to give pleasure to others and tried to find a way to talk about whatever it is I wanted to talk about. I don't know if I've done so logically, but I hope you found something of something interesting in this discussion tonight. And again, very happy Diwali to you, and God bless you. Thanks for joining us.